My fiancé and bridesmaid secretly bet on my public breakdown at the wedding I paid for. So I canceled it all and destroyed their reputations. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I was supposed to marry my fiancée Amy, who's 27, just last week. Honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything that went down. We had been together for 4 years, and I genuinely thought she was my soulmate. I met Amy at a friend's barbecue party. She was this super lively girl who could brighten up any room she walked into. Not gonna lie, she was way out of my league, smart, stunning, and could make anyone laugh. Our first date was actually pretty funny. I took her to this fancy restaurant to impress her, but they messed up our reservation. Instead of getting upset, she suggested we grab hot dogs from a street vendor and eat them in the park. That's when I knew she was different. The first 3 years were amazing, like the kind of relationship you see in those cheesy posts on Our Relationships, where everyone calls it fake because it seems too perfect. She was always there for me when things got tough. When I lost my grandpa last year, Amy handled everything, called my boss to get me time off, made sure I ate, and even organized all the family stuff so I could just focus on grieving. She'd leave little notes in my lunch when I had big meetings, at work. Once, she even learned how to make my mom's lasagna recipe because she knew I missed home-cooked meals. Amy was also super fun to be around. We'd have these random adventure days where we'd just drive somewhere without any plans. She taught me to stop being so serious all the time and enjoy life more. My friends loved her because she always made our game nights better. My sister, though, never said much, but I could tell she didn't get along with Amy. That wasn't really a problem, though, but things started to change about 6 months ago. At first, it was little things. She began mentioning her ex, Tom, more and more. Like we'd be watching TV and she'd randomly say, "Oh, Tom loved this show," or "Tom never understood shows like this. He was so basic." At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone talks about their exes sometimes, right? Then her pranks got worse. Amy always liked jokes and pranks, but they used to be fun ones we'd both laugh at. Like that time she swapped all my socks for bright pink ones before an important meeting. It was funny because she knew I had these shoes where no one could see them anyway. But lately, her pranks started to feel different. Mean, almost. When I got this huge promotion I'd been working toward for 2 years, instead of being happy like she used to be about my successes, she gave this weird speech at my celebration. She stood right there in front of my coworkers, my boss, and my parents, saying I probably just got lucky and that my boss felt sorry for me. Everyone just stood there awkwardly while she laughed. The old Amy would have never done that. She used to be my biggest supporter. The proposal is when I really started to notice something was wrong. I had spent months planning it. I saved up for this fancy restaurant, got her favorite flowers, and even worked with the restaurant to set up a special dessert with the ring. When I got down on one knee, she pretended she didn't want to marry me for 5 whole minutes. She just sat there saying, "Oh, I don't know," while everyone in the restaurant stared at us. When she finally said yes and laughed, saying it was just a joke, something felt off. The old Amy might have played along for a few seconds, but she would never have let me sit there feeling foolish for that long. It's strange looking back now. The same things I used to love about her, her spontaneity, her humor, her outgoing personality, started to feel different. It was like she wasn't doing things to make us both happy anymore, but just to get attention or laughs from other people. Every time I tried talking to her about how her pranks were making me feel lately, she'd just say, "OMG, babe, learn to take a joke," or, "Why are you so sensitive?" The old Amy would have listened. We used to be able to talk about anything. My best friend started noticing the change, too. He'd say things like, "Dude, is Amy okay? She's acting different." But I kept making excuses because I remembered how great things used to be. I kept telling myself, maybe she's just stressed about the wedding or work or something. The Amy I fell in love with was this amazing, caring person who made me want to be better. She'd surprise me with my favorite snacks whenever I was having a rough day, remember random things I mentioned months ago, and always knew how to make me laugh when I felt down. That's why it took me so long to notice when things started shifting. When you love someone that much, you don't want to see the bad parts. But man, the changes just kept coming. Looking back now, I can spot all these red flags popping up one after another. It's like watching a replay of a game where you already know how it ends. All the signs are so clear now, but when you're in the middle of it, you just keep hoping things will go back to normal. Anyway, about 2 months before the wedding, things got really strange, like the kind of strange where you know something's wrong but can't quite figure out what. Amy started talking about her ex, let's call him Tom, a lot more than usual. She'd always bring him up in these backhanded compliment ways. Like, we'd be at dinner, and I'd tell her about a new project at work, and she'd say, "This is why you're so much better than Tom. He could barely handle basic math, and here you are managing million-dollar projects." Or we'd be grocery shopping, and I'd be checking nutrition labels, trying to eat healthy, and she'd say, "Tom never cared about that stuff. He just grabbed whatever was cheapest. He was so simple." At first I thought maybe she was just trying to make me feel good or something, but it kept happening more and more. We'd be watching a documentary about space or something, and she'd say, "Tom would never watch stuff like this. It was too complicated for him. He just watched sports all day." But the way she said it was weird, like she missed how simple he was. Then I started noticing she was always on her phone, like always, during dinner while watching TV. Even when we tried to plan wedding stuff, she'd get texts and quickly turn her phone away if I walked by. I'm not usually jealous, but something felt off. One night she fell asleep on the couch watching a movie, and her phone lit up. It was just for a second, but that was all it took. My stomach dropped. The message preview flashed across the screen. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," before disappearing. My mind grabbed every detail, the way his name sat so casually on her screen. How could she still have his number while we were engaged? The emoji, small and harmless, but suddenly loaded with meaning I didn't want to face. I tried to breathe, telling myself it could be innocent. Maybe she was meeting an old friend. Maybe it was about the wedding, but my gut twisted, telling me what my brain refused to accept. After that, I started watching where she went, how long she was gone, the little holes in her stories. She kept saying she had all these wedding planning meetings with her bridesmaids, but something didn't add up, so one day I decided to follow her. I felt ridiculous doing it, like some paranoid boyfriend in a bad movie, but I had to know. I had to see for myself. She pulled into a coffee shop downtown, parked, and went inside. No bridesmaids, no planners, just him. Tom was already there, waiting at a table near the window. I stayed outside, leaning against a lamppost like some shadow in the night. My heart pounded as I watched them. They weren't just talking or catching up. They looked comfortable, familiar, like two people with history, like two people who'd been doing this for a while. She laughed at something he said, tilting her head that way she always did when she was flirting, twisting a strand of hair around her finger, flashing that easy, intimate smile that used to be just for me. I felt sick. My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to storm in, call her out right there in front of everyone, but I couldn't move or breathe. I just stood there, watching through the window like a fool who didn't see this coming, like a guy who thought he was marrying the love of his life, when really she was already slipping away. I didn't confront her when she got back. Maybe I should have, but I wanted to see how far this would go. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more things. She'd say she was going dress shopping with her mom, but her mom would call me asking about wedding details at that exact time. She claimed to have late meetings at work, but a coworker I know said she'd left early that day. Her bridesmaids acted strange. They'd give me looks whenever wedding stuff came up, like they knew something I didn't. They'd whisper whenever I walked by, then quickly fall silent. Everyone except one of her friends. I'll call her Jen. She's a quiet bridesmaid who works at my company. Jen always seemed uneasy when the other bridesmaids were giggling about something. I remember once at the wedding venue during planning, Amy was going on about how Tom could never afford a place like that, how he still lived in his college apartment with roommates. But she had this strange tone, almost like she found it charming. Then she looked at me and said, "That's why you're so much better, babe. You've got real ambition. Tom was just simple." But the way she said simple sounded like she was recalling something fondly. Jen pulled me aside that day, looking really nervous. She started saying something like, "Look, there's something you should—" But Amy came back just then, and Jen quickly walked away. The last straw was when I overheard Amy on the phone in our backyard. She thought I was at work, but I'd come home early with a headache. She was laughing about something and said, "Yeah, he has no idea. He thinks I'm at wedding planning meetings." Then she saw me through the window and hung up fast, trying to cover it up by pretending she was talking to her sister about a surprise for me. I knew right then that our relationship was over. Even before I fully understood what was going on with her and Tom, before I found out about her ridiculous prank plans, before anything on the wedding day, the trust was just gone. But here's the thing. I didn't say a word. Call me petty. But I wanted to see what she was up to. All those secret meetings, the weird comments about Tom, the giggling bridesmaids, something was coming. And knowing how much Amy loved her pranks, I had a feeling it was going to be huge. I just didn't expect what it actually was. Looking back, maybe I should have confronted her. Maybe I should have called off the wedding right then. But honestly, I'm glad I didn't. So there I was, about 3 weeks before the wedding, sitting in my car outside that coffee shop where Amy was meeting Tom again. And I knew I had to do something. I'm not usually the planner in our relationship. Amy always took care of that. But something in my gut screamed for backup. I called my buddy Mike. Mike's a corporate lawyer who's always telling wild stories about divorce cases he's worked on. We went to college together, and he's seen Amy's pranks firsthand. Like that time at his birthday party when she showed up as a singing telegram and embarrassed him in front of his whole law firm. He never really liked her after that. So, I called Mike while watching Amy laugh at whatever Tom was saying. "Dude, I need help. I think Amy's planning something for the wedding, and it's not going to be good." Mike was quiet for a moment. I'll never forget sitting in his fancy office while he just listened to everything. When I finished, he looked at me seriously and said, "We need insurance." Then he pulled out a legal pad and started writing. "Look," he said, "I can't stop her from whatever she's planning, but we can make sure she regrets it if she tries anything." We spent about 4 hours in his office drafting a completely fake prenup. Mike said it wouldn't hold up in court for even 5 minutes, but it looked official, filled with fancy legal language I didn't understand. The key part was a specific clause about public humiliation. I still have a picture of it on my phone. If either party deliberately embarrasses or humiliates the other publicly before signing this contract, all joint financial obligations will be immediately voided and the offending party must issue a public apology. Mike even included detailed definitions of what counts as public humiliation and financial obligation, added fake case law references, making it look like one of those 50-page contracts nobody ever reads. The best part? He put an official-looking stamp on it and had his secretary notarize it to make it look more legit. Amy always signed whatever was put in front of her. She even admitted once she never read her own apartment lease. Mike said she'd never know it was fake. I kept the prenup in a black folder and gave it to my best man Dan to hold on to. I told him to keep it with him during the wedding, just in case. Dan thought I was being paranoid, but he's known me since we were kids and could tell how worried I was. The whole time we were doing this, I felt a bit guilty, like maybe I was going too far, maybe I was just being paranoid. But then I'd remember Amy was still meeting Tom behind my back, still lying about where she was going, still acting strange with her bridesmaids. I didn't plan to use the prenup unless something actually happened at the wedding. Jen, the bridesmaid from my work, came to my office one day looking really nervous. She started saying she couldn't keep quiet anymore, but then Amy called her phone right at that moment. The look on Jen's face when she saw Amy's name pop up, I knew whatever was coming wasn't good. I also started noticing more strange things at home. Amy was having long phone calls in the bathroom with the shower running. She'd close her laptop quickly whenever I walked in. One time, I caught her deleting text messages when she thought I was asleep. The weird part was she was also being extra nice sometimes, randomly bringing home my favorite takeout or suggesting we watch my favorite movies. Looking back, I think she was feeling guilty, or maybe just trying to throw me off. I don't know. Remember the night before the wedding, sitting at my parents' house. Amy insisted we not see each other before the ceremony. I was staring at that black folder with the prenup, and part of me hoped I'd never have to use it. Maybe I was wrong. About everything. Maybe Amy was just planning some silly surprise. My mom came in and saw me looking at the folder. She didn't know what was inside, but she could tell something was wrong. She sat beside me and said, "You know you don't have to go through with this if you're unsure." I just told her everything was fine. That night, I put the folder in Dan's bag and told him to keep it close during the ceremony. He joked it was like a movie where someone objects at the wedding, but neither of us laughed. The next morning, while getting ready, I kept thinking about that folder, hoping I wouldn't need it, but feeling strangely calm knowing it was there. The wedding morning was actually perfect, almost too perfect. Everything at the venue looked amazing, just how Amy wanted it. While getting ready with my groomsmen, I kept thinking, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just paranoid. Dan, my best man, kept checking the folder like it was his duty. He'd pat his bag every few minutes to make sure it was there. The other groomsmen thought he was nervous about the rings and teased him. My mom was already crying before the ceremony started, happy tears. She thought my dad kept fixing my tie even though it was fine. Looking back, I think they both sensed something was off but didn't want to say anything. I remember standing at the altar, watching everyone take their seats. Amy's bridesmaids were all whispering and giggling except Jen, who looked like she was about to be sick. She wouldn't even meet my eyes. Then the music started, and everyone stood. Amy walked in with her dad, and honestly, she looked stunning. Actually, perfect, which just made what happened next even worse. The ceremony began normally. The priest talked about love and commitment. I even started feeling silly for having that prenup in Dan's bag. Then came the vows. Just before we were to say them, Amy suddenly grabbed the microphone from the priest. He looked confused, but she smiled big like, "Don't worry." Then, all excited like a game show host, she said, "I have a little surprise for my wonderful soon-to-be husband." My stomach dropped. Dan immediately put his hand on the bag holding the folder. I saw my dad sit up straighter in his seat. Amy turned to face all our guests with a huge smile and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to the real love of my life." The back doors of the venue opened, and in walked Tom, like something out of a movie, strolling down the aisle with this stupid grin while everyone turned to see what was happening. My mom gasped so loudly it echoed across the room. My sister actually stood up looking ready to fight. One of my aunts just said, "Oh no," loud enough for everyone to hear. But Amy wasn't finished. She stood there beaming like she'd just won an award, going on about how she couldn't say, "I do," without getting Tom's approval first because he was such a big part of her life, and they'd been talking a lot lately. Then that idiot. Tom actually walked up to the altar and slapped me on the back like we were buddies or something. He had this smug smirk on his face that I just wanted to wipe off with one punch. Most of the bridesmaids were giggling like this was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. The priest looked like he wanted to disappear. Jen was crying now, full-on tears streaming down her face. But Amy wasn't done. Not even close. She pulled out her phone and said, "Oh, and I have something else to show everyone." She started scrolling through a group chat with her bridesmaids. "Look, babe," she said, showing me her screen. "We've had this little pool going. The girls and I have been placing bets." I stared at the messages, and for a moment my brain just shut down. These girls, who were supposed to be helping Amy plan our wedding, had been betting real money on whether she'd back out at the last second. One bridesmaid bet $200 that Amy would fake cold feet right before the ceremony. Another put $150 on me crying at the altar. Lisa bet $300 that Amy would pull off something epic. Her exact words. They had this whole spreadsheet with odds and everything, like they were gambling on a football game instead of someone's wedding, someone's life. The worst part? There were messages from months ago. This wasn't some last-minute joke. They'd been planning this for months. All those wedding planning meetings? They were probably sitting around plotting how to humiliate me. Amy kept scrolling through the chat, laughing and pointing out different bets. "Oh, look, Rachel almost got it right," she said. "I'd bring a surprise guest. That counts, right?" Tom stood there looking over Amy's shoulder at the phone and laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. "Man," he said, "you really went all out for this one." I glanced around the room. Some guests were whispering. I could see phones coming out because, of course, people were recording this. It would probably be all over social media in 5 minutes. And Amy? She just stood there in her perfect white dress, waiting for me to laugh it off like this was just another one of her pranks. That I was supposed to brush it off like she hadn't just destroyed our entire relationship in front of everyone we knew. "Come on, babe," she said, poking me in the side. "You're not mad, right? It's just a joke. Tom's not really going to object or anything." I started laughing again. I glanced at Dan, and he already had the folder halfway out of his bag. But Amy wasn't finished. She turned to the guests and said, "Oh, should I tell them about the backup plan? You know, in case he actually got mad?" That's when I knew this wasn't just a prank gone wrong. This wasn't just Amy being Amy. This was outright cruelty. She'd spent months planning how to humiliate me in front of everyone I cared about. She'd involved her friends, her ex, probably half the people in this room. I looked at her standing there, so proud of herself, and I didn't see the girl I fell in love with anymore. I saw someone who thought my feelings were a joke, someone who'd rather get laughs than love. That's when I decided, if she wanted a show, I'd give her one. I smiled at her, the calmest smile I've ever given. She smiled back, probably thinking I was finally playing along. I turned to the priest, who honestly looked like he wanted to quit on the spot. "Hey," I said, super politely. "Do we have that table set up for signing the marriage license? I need to grab something real quick." The priest just pointed to a small table off to the side, probably thinking I was about to make things worse. I walked over to Dan. The room was dead silent, like everyone was holding their breath. Amy still wore that huge smile, but I could see confusion creeping in. This wasn't part of her plan. I pulled out the black folder, the one Mike helped me prepare. It looked official, but superficial. I held it up for everyone to see. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, using my best presentation voice, "before we go any further, I'd like to share a document with my dear fiancée." Amy tilted her head like a confused puppy. "Wait, what?" I started walking back to the altar, taking my time. My hands weren't shaking. I was just ready. "See, Amy," I said, calm as if I were explaining something to a kid. "I had my lawyer draft up a little agreement before the wedding. Just a small precaution, you know, in case you ever decided to do something like this." I held up the contract so everyone could see the official-looking stamp at the bottom, the one Mike's secretary had added. Amy's face started draining of color. "What the hell is that?" she asked, her smile finally cracking. "Oh, just a little clause," I said, pretending to flip through the pages. "See this part right here? It says that if either party publicly humiliates the other before signing the marriage license, then all joint financial obligations, like the wedding, honeymoon, and shared assets, are immediately null and void." The guest gasped, like a real group gasp, the kind you see in movies when someone reveals the killer. Amy was blinking rapidly now, like she was trying to wake up from a bad dream. "Wait, what? That's not real! That can't be real!" she stammered. "Oh, it's very real," I said, channeling my inner lawyer. "It also requires the guilty party to issue a public apology right here, in front of all our guests." She finally stopped. Smirking, Tom said, "Dude, you can't be serious. This is a joke, right?" I turned to him and gave the biggest smile. "Oh, I take pranks very seriously. Don't you, Tom, since you helped plan this one and all?" Amy was starting to sweat. Her perfect makeup was getting a little messy. "Babe, this is crazy. You're not actually mad, are you?" That's when I delivered the line I'd been practicing since I saw her with Tom at that coffee shop. "Why would I be mad, Amy? This is hilarious. It's all part of the fun, right?" I snapped the folder shut loudly. "I'm canceling the entire wedding." Dead silence. You could hear a pin drop across the room. Amy's perfect smile shattered. "Wait, what?" She whispered. "Oh, don't look so shocked," I said, tucking the folder under my arm. "You had your joke. Now it's my turn. Wedding's off." The room exploded. Whispers, gasps, the works. The priest backed away from us like we were both crazy. The bridesmaids finally stopped giggling. Amy's face went from pale white to bright red in seconds. "You're joking," she said, her voice shaking. "Am I?" I looked at Dan. "Hey man, would you do the honors?" Dan, the legend he is, pulled out his phone, hit play, and hit the road jack, blasted through the venue speakers. Some guests laughed, others sat in stunned silence. A few got up and started leaving. Smart move, honestly. Amy looked like she was about to faint. "You're not serious," she kept saying. "You're not walking away." I just grinned. I literally was. I turned to my parents. Mom was smiling through tears, and Dad looked proud for the first time all day. "I think we're done here," I said. My dad stood up immediately and told the guests the wedding was over. Always the practical one. Then I turned back to Tom, who was slowly backing away from the altar. "Hey, Tom," I called out. "You like stealing people's fiancés, right? Well, congrats. She's all yours." That finally wiped the smirk off his face. Amy spun around to face him. "Tom, tell him this is stupid." But Tom was already heading for the door. I figured I'd head out too. The bridesmaids were looking at their feet. Some guests were laughing. Outright, and Amy looked like her whole world had collapsed. "You can't just leave me like this," she screamed. I stopped at the end of the aisle and turned around one last time. "Amy, you love attention so much. Well, congratulations, you're getting it." And with that, I walked out of my own wedding. The next 24 hours were insane. My phone exploded with messages and missed calls from Amy, hundreds of them. At first she acted confused, unable to understand why I left, kept saying it was just a joke and why I was being so dramatic. Then she got mad, sending long messages about how I humiliated her. Ironic, right? And how she couldn't believe I'd ruin our wedding over a silly prank. She even claimed I had no right to walk out. But here's where it gets good. Remember that group chat where they placed bets? Dan, being the genius he is, had taken screenshots of everything before we left, from one of the bridesmaids' phones. All their messages about planning the prank, all the bets they made, even messages from months ago discussing different ways to mess with me at the wedding. Amy tried telling people I abandoned her at the altar, played the victim on social media, and everything, but then those screenshots started spreading. Turns out, people don't take kindly to someone turning a wedding into a betting game. The fallout was massive. Those bridesmaids who thought it was hilarious started freaking out when they realized their messages were public. Sarah, the maid of honor, actually lost a job opportunity because the screenshots made their way to her potential employer. Guess they didn't want someone who found humiliating others funny. Amy's parents called me the next day. Her mom was crying, saying she had no idea Amy would pull something like this. Apparently, they'd warned her not to cause any trouble at the wedding. Her dad actually apologized to me and said he understood why I did what I did. Then came the money drama. Amy started demanding I pay her back for wedding expenses. That made me laugh, since I'd covered almost everything. The venue, my credit card, catering, and that fancy honeymoon she bragged about, all booked under my name. One call to each place, and everything was canceled. The venue manager was surprisingly understanding, saying he'd seen some wild weddings, but nothing like this. The honeymoon cancellation hit Amy hard. She'd already posted all over social media about our amazing 2 weeks in Hawaii, and now had to explain why there were no beach photos. Her bridesmaids quickly started distancing themselves. Funny how fast people disappear when they realize they're sinking with you. Even those who were in on the prank suddenly wanted nothing to do with her. Tom ghosted her completely, ignoring calls and texts. Guess he didn't find it funny anymore once people started questioning why he thought ruining a wedding was okay. Jen finally came clean and told me everything. I could see the guilt weighing on her. She wasn't like the others. She never laughed at Amy's pranks, never joined the group chats, never found humiliating someone funny. She admitted she'd known about the plan for weeks, but felt trapped, torn between speaking up and risking Amy turning on her. Jen told me she tried to warn Amy, begged her to call it off, but Amy just brushed her off, saying it would be hilarious to see my reaction. Tom, of course, had no problem playing along, probably thinking it made him look cool. Jen hated every second of it. She said she barely slept the night before the wedding, anxious and sick, knowing what was coming. When she saw me standing at the altar, clueless, she wanted to scream to stop it, but froze. Her voice was quiet and full of regret, like she thought I'd hate her for not doing more. But for the first time in months, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Actual common sense. Someone who didn't just follow the crowd. Someone who cared about feelings. Honestly, that stuck with me more than the whole wedding disaster. Week later, Amy showed up at my apartment looking exhausted and still wearing her engagement ring. She started crying, apologizing, saying she never meant for things to go this far, that she still loved me and we could fix it. I just handed her an envelope. Inside was an invitation to a fake wedding rehearsal. Same venue, same time our wedding was supposed to be. The guest list, everyone who saw her prank, no groom's name, just a note saying, "Now we're even." She read it 5 times before she understood. When she looked up, I shut the door in her face. Remember all those phones recording at the wedding? Clips started popping up online. People called her the bride who got left. Her own prank became a meme. Some of Amy's friends tried defending her online, saying I should have taken the joke better. But then more screenshots surfaced, showing how long they'd planned this, the money they bet, and all the nasty things they said about me in their group chat. Amy tried reaching out through mutual friends, claiming she'd learned her lesson. But every time someone showed me her messages, they also saw the screenshots. Soon, she ran out of people willing to support her. It's been 6 months since the wedding that never happened, and Amy never really recovered. She kept trying to crawl back into my life, sending messages about how she could fix everything if I gave her another chance, as if chances were unlimited and she hadn't already burned them all with her stupid pranks. But I was done. Her bridesmaids, the same ones who laughed along with her, didn't stick around either. Sarah, the ex-maid of honor, even sent a long apology, saying she should have warned me and felt terrible about what happened. Too little, too late. Tom blocked Amy on everything and started telling people he was manipulated into the whole mess. Last I heard, he moved back to his hometown and now works at his dad's store. Guess the simple life wasn't so bad after all. Amy's parents still apologize every time they run into my family. Her mom sent me a Christmas card saying she thinks about that day all the time and wishes she'd seen the sign sooner. Her dad even helped me sell the house Amy and I were supposed to move into. But here's the strange part. Something good actually came out of this whole disaster. Jen and I started grabbing coffee, sometimes just talking, you know? It turns out Jen had liked me for a while but never said anything because I was with Amy. We began hanging out more. Not serious at first, just lunch breaks at work, maybe dinner sometimes. She's different from Amy in every way. Quiet, kind, thoughtful, never making jokes at someone else's expense. 3 months after the wedding that never happened, we started dating officially. My parents love her. Even my sister, who hated Amy from day one, thinks Jen's perfect for me. Amy found out about us through mutual friends and tried stirring up drama online, accusing Jen of stealing me and saying she planned it all. Nobody believed her. The screenshots of her planning to humiliate me with her ex pretty much destroyed any sympathy she might have had. Speaking of Amy, she's still trying to repair her reputation. She posted a long public apology on Facebook about how she's grown and learned from her mistakes. Then, 2 days later, She showed up in my company's parking lot trying to confront Jen. Security had to escort her out. My life is actually better now. I got promoted at work. A real promotion, not the one Amy mocked. I moved into a new apartment in a nicer part of town. Jen and I are taking things slow. We went on a small beach trip last month. Nothing fancy, but it was nice being with someone who doesn't feel the need to post every second on social media or turn everything into a joke. Oh, and I still have that prenup folder. Mike, my lawyer friend, framed it and gave it to me as a birthday gift. It's hanging in my home office now. Jen thinks it's hilarious. My friends say I dodged a bullet. I think I dodged a whole firing squad. Sometimes I look at old pictures of Amy and me and can't believe I didn't see what was coming. But you know what they say, when you're wearing rose-colored glasses, red flags just look like flags. The strangest part, I'm actually grateful it happened. If Amy hadn't shown her true colors that day, I might have married her. I might have spent years dealing with her pranks and lies, never knowing she was meeting Tom behind my back. Instead, I'm with someone who respects me. Someone who believes love isn't about pranks, social media likes, or humiliating your partner for laughs. So yeah, that's where everyone ended up. Amy's still single, living with her parents. Tom's back in his hometown, the bridesmaids scattered across different states. And me? I'm actually happy. Turns out sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best things.